People seem to be, a lot of people seem to be very disaffected in the United States, but also in Europe, even India. And yet the numbers, if you look at the numbers, growth numbers, unemployment, I'm not sure why they're so unhappy.
Well, it's a great question, and I think the American people are looking for more than, come on, man, from the White House. They're looking for an explanation. And I think the numbers are right, and they're not being fudged. But under the hood, let's start with inflation. So many people say, well, economists say inflation rates are coming down, but the prices of things I'm buying are still higher than what I'm used to, and my wages are not keeping up. That is a real problem. And inflation stands for a problem of unintended consequences of elites' decisions. And it's not the only one. We did it in globalization. We've done it in technological change. We did it in the global financial crisis. I think average people might be onto something here.
At the same time, real wages are going up at this point in the United States, aren't they? People don't seem to appreciate that.
Well, I think they finally are, but only modestly. And I think people are fearful about the future as well. We're being offered policy platforms, frankly, by both the major party candidates that don't really have growth at the center.
Well, what would it take to get growth?
Well, I think it focuses on getting productivity growth and getting people able to work productively in the economy that we have. And productivity growth is about promoting investment, but it's also about promoting innovation. You know, rather than massive industrial policy subsidies, why not a lot more money for basic research, for the new technologies of tomorrow?
When was the last time we had real productivity growth in the United States?
Well, right now, we are actually experiencing productivity growth, but the real booms in productivity growth were the period after the Second World War to the 1970s, and then again in the mid-1990s to about the mid of the first decade in the 2000s. There's no reason we can't have better productivity growth, particularly with all the encouraging news about artificial intelligence.
But with both of those booms that you've described, after World War II and then in the mid-1990s, how much of that was technological? How much of it was actually changing the way we made things, which made it much more productive?
Technology played a very big role, particularly in the second episode, but we're on the cusp of very major possibilities from artificial intelligence. The question is, do we have the political will and skill to prepare people for that world? Because the pace of change is going to be very fast.
You understand economics so well, but also understand it from inside the White House, where you were. How do you bridge the gap between what good economics would give you and what the people want? How do you make them want good economics?
Well, I think it's a couple things. First of all, you need to understand why people feel the way they do. A good politician, and I would argue a good economist, is out there visiting with people, trying to see what's on people's minds. And you have to pose economics as the solution to a real problem. You know, when economists love markets, and I love markets, the reason to love markets is not because markets are great, it's because what they produce. And we have to always make the connection between an economic mechanism and really helping people flourish.
Where is that being done well around the world today, if anywhere?
Gosh, it would be hard to find. We have done it in this country before. We did it in the 19th century. We did it in the middle of the 20th century. We have done it. I would argue we need a good dose of classical liberals like Adam Smith brought back to life.
That's fascinating. To what extent is the problem because we've subsidized so much of industry? I mean, we had the great financial crisis, and I think most of us agree there had to be some intervention there. We had the pandemic. I think most would agree something had to be done about an economy that was brought to a standstill. At the same time, we have the government playing in the game a lot more than just refereeing at this point.
It's a big problem. I mean, the clinical answer is it risks misallocating a lot of capital, but the more fundamental answer is government is not good at two things. One, picking winners, which is what this is about, and more important, letting go of losers. The fear is that these subsidies become quasi-permanent entitlements from the state that dull competition. You know, decades ago, people like Hayek, a great economist, Nobel laureate, had this figured out in his essay on the use of knowledge. You're better off having markets figure these things out, with government being behind the scenes, maybe with new technologies, but not subsidies.
As we look at some of the expression I would think of dissatisfaction, maybe even anger. In Europe, we had with the parliamentary elections, some of what we're seeing in polling here. Is it because people think that they see a better route, or they're just so unhappy with the current one, they'll take anything? Because it's not clear to me always that there's a cohesive theory of economics on the other side that makes a lot of sense.
It's a great point. I think people are disaffected with the status quo and with the fact that status quo politicians, whether it's in the United States or in continental Europe, are just telling them, you know, life is fine. I don't really see articulate plans on the other side. The idea that we would replace mushy industrial policy with tariffs is like we're going back to a mercantilism debate from the 18th century.